So we can begin with our opening prayers. Okay, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. Sangye chedang soki choknam la jangchu bardu dakni kyapsuchi daki chenyen gibe sonam ki rola penchir sangye druparsho sangye chedang soki choknam la Jangchu bardu dagni gyatsuchi dagi chinyen gibe sona rola penchi sangye druparsho sangye jadang soki choknam la Jangchu bardu dagni gyatsuchi dagi Gibe sonam rola sangye drupa. Four immeasurable thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then at the top of on the other side of the page, the 7-limb prayer. This is basically the 7-limb practice in a prayer form. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And then the mandala offering. Zajipa ki jokshin leto Ramri Ramlingji Idegen Padi Sangye Jing Omide Pagi Rokunam Dachingla Chepashu Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Yatayam. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome, good to see you all. We are continuing with the Bodhicharyavatara of Shantideva. We're now on chapter 6, which is the chapter on patience. Just as a recap of the way this is all arranged, the first 3 chapters were talking about that saying, may the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise. Well, those first 3 chapters were talking about the arisal of bodhicitta, making it arise in our minds. So that was the excellence of bodhicitta, confession, and taking hold of bodhicitta. Then the next 3 chapters are about may that born not decline, may the bodhicitta not decline. So the next 3 chapters, the two we did last week, carefulness and vigilant introspection, and this week's patience, is about keeping that bodhicitta that we have become enthused about, that has arisen in our minds, keeping it from kind of backsliding, keeping it from degenerating. So this is where we get these 3 chapters, which patience is the third of them, is where we actually get into the what you might call the Bodhisattva training, the discipline of a Bodhisattva, and the training that we go through to keep that bodhicitta going. There also is another way of looking at these chapters, which has to do with what's called the 6 paramitas, or the 6 perfections. And these are qualities that on the Bodhisattva path, gradually over many, however long it takes to become a Buddha, what we're doing is we're perfecting these qualities. And the way we perfect, and so they're generosity, ethical discipline, patience. There are 6 of them. So as we perfect, the way we perfect these qualities is, it's not just like, for instance, today, it's not just regular patience where it's just sort of, graying and burying it. It's a patience that is, as we try to perfect it, we're combining that patience with an understanding of emptiness, with an understanding of the nature of reality, how we all are dependently connected, interdependently connected, and everything is dependent arising. And the more we understand the wisdom, the more we can actually perfect these qualities. So that's where we're at in this particular chapter that we're on today is patience, which is actually one of the 6 perfections, patience.
Isn't the whole thing tracking?
Yeah, the whole thing is the first 3 chapters were generosity, because when we were sort of getting enthused about bodhicitta, bringing it also to the point, but at the end of the 3rd chapter, we were actually taking the Bodhisattva vow, or Shantideva was taking the Bodhisattva vow. That's sort of the culmination of this, getting this generosity. It's this altruistic intention to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's the generosity they're talking about. It's not just giving gifts, it's that generosity. It's huge. It's a huge generosity. So those are the 3 first chapters are about that kind of generosity, that paramita, that perfection that we're training towards. Last week's 2 chapters, which were carefulness and vigilant introspection, which was mindfulness, like carefulness and mindfulness, those are ethical discipline. Generosity, ethical discipline, yeah. Because what we're doing is, what I talked about last week, discipline, it comes from the word that disciple comes from. It's discipulos, and it means trainer, or a trainee. It's also related to the Greek word where we get the ascetic from, ascesis, which also means a practitioner, exerciser, trainee, So it has to do, in Greek, it had to do sort of like with athletic training, But that kind of gives you an idea of what the Bodhisattva path is.
The ethics.
Yeah.
The second.
Yeah, it's the training. Yeah. And so ethics is the 2nd, and now we're on the 3rd, which is patience.
Of the 6
perfections.
And
Perfections.
chapter?
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6 is where he starts discussing patience, the 3rd of the 6 perfections. I love it.
Okay.
These things it is helpful when you see how they fit together.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
it follows a scheme, a pattern.
So if you're not familiar with the 6 perfections, after class you should go Google them, and then it'll help you have an intellectual framework for how Shantideva constructed them.
Yeah. Okay, so now this chapter on patience is basically talking about the problem of anger and how we deal with anger. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, guys. You got the boys today?
Yes.
All right. So Shantideva says anger is actually our worst enemy. It's a particular kind of anger that he's talking about here. It's a destructive anger, the kind of anger that wants to destroy its object. It's like very, very kind of hateful anger. It's not the kind of anger where, we're just sort of annoyed by something, we're frustrated by something, but we actually don't want to destroy the thing that we're annoyed at or frustrated by. It's that kind of anger where you're so angry at a person, you want to kill them, that kind of thing. And those kinds of words come out of your mouth that are so destructive. That's the kind of anger that is the absolute worst enemy for a bodhisattva. Because what it does is, if we allow ourselves to engage in that level of anger, that anger will completely destroy all of this sonam, all of this positive energy, positive quality, positive momentum that we've developed on this path. A flash of anger like that, really destructive anger, can just wipe it out. Because, as we all know, if we ever had that kind of anger, if we've ever had that kind of anger, our mind is so troubled after we do that. There's no room for any positive energy to express itself. All we can think about is this terrible thing that happened. Say you murdered somebody, right? That's all you'd be able to think about. All your positive merit, your positive sonam, it would be gone. This is why it's so important not to let it happen. So that's what this chapter is about. How do we not let that happen? How do we not let that arise? So Shantideva says in stanza 1, all the good works gathered in 1,000 ages, such as deeds of generosity and offerings to the blissful ones, a single flash of anger shatters them. No extreme negative action, no evil is there that's similar to anger. No self-control to be compared with patience. Steep yourself, therefore, in patience in various ways insistently. So insistently, what is meaning, we have to do this over and over and over again. This is not going to be, this is not going to happen once and we got it.
Right.
We all know this. If we've had to deal with somebody who's very, very, very angry, you know, or we are angry ourselves, it's just, we're not going to get rid of this in one day. It's going to take, this is our training. This is the Bodhisattva training. This is the Jedi warrior. That's what we're talking about. So let's see. There are two things that we should always do in regard to our sonam, our positive energy that we're generating. And the first thing is that when we have that sonam, when in any, like, if we go through a particular practice or say prayers or have a class like this, you dedicate that merit at the end. You dedicate it for the benefit of all sentient beings. You make specific decision that merit, say the merit from this class, we'll dedicate at the end of the class. That merit is going to be used solely for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. So that kind of protects it. Otherwise, if you just, you know, do something good, but you don't really dedicate it, you could destroy it. You could destroy it. But in what we've done is, in our mind, we've set apart a place that's where this merit is going, and it's never going to be destroyed by anything else I've done. You know, it's a psychological thing, but it actually will work, because we'll know if we get into a situation where we've been so disturbed by some negative thing we've done, we'll still know, I dedicated that merit. That merit is still there. I dedicated it. You know, whereas if we didn't do that, our mind would be so disturbed we'd be lost. You know. It's all about, this is all psychological. What Buddhist specialty is psychology. I mean, if they had that word back then, that's what he would have used. It's psychology. It's the study of the mind, you know? And so that's what we're doing here. So we shouldn't, personally, I try to stay away from magical kind of thinking. You know, I like keeping it in the realm of psychology because that makes sense to me. Of course, there are things I don't know. There's things we all don't know. Who knows? You know, but we can only go by what we know now. The other thing that we need to do to avoid this anger from arising is the practice of patience, which in Tibetan it's zöpa, yeah, or zöpa. And what Shantideva is talking about here is a particular kind of patience where we say somebody is angry at us or is criticizing or something like that. Normally what we do, our ego will get very offended, and the first thing we want to do is lash back out, you know, say, no, how dare you, like that kind of thing. That's what we normally do. Or if we're going to try and practice patience, we'll just, like, you know, be angry, but keep our mouth shut. This is a different kind of thing. Zöpa is a different kind of thing. And it sort of translates as carry, or bear. Carry, like you're carrying something, or bearing something. So what it's like is that we're carrying say this negative situation is happening, rather than be angry, what we're doing is we're transforming it. So we're carrying it out of the sphere of ego, self-grasping, and anger, and we're putting it into the sphere of bodhicitta, compassion, and wisdom. So it would be like anytime something comes up where somebody starts yelling at us, or something triggers our own anger, or we're being criticized, it's like a little bell should go off and go right to our heart and go chitta, 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 bodhicitta, bodhicitta. So remember that. That's what we're doing. That's our training. When this situation arises, which is going to make us get angry, immediately think bodhicitta. I am on the path to become enlightened. I'm on the path for the benefit of all sentient beings. I need to transform how this angry situation is happening, and we need compassion for the person who seems to be our attacker, the aggressor. We need compassion for that person. And we also need some understanding or some wisdom about how the ego works, why people are frustrated, what makes them act the way they do, so we can sort of understand and know how to sort of diffuse the conflict. So this is zöpa. It's not the regular grin and bear it with gritted teeth, It's a different kind of thing, and it's going to take practice. We're not going to get it overnight. This is the whole point of the Buddhist path is practice and repeating insistently. I mean, I think Shantideva said, steep yourself in patience in various ways insistently, So there are three main sections of this chapter. The first is how to remove anger. The second is, it's a longer part of the chapter, is how to cultivate patience. And the third is how we should look at other sentient beings. So first, how to remove anger, how to cultivate patience, and then how we should be looking at other beings. Especially when we're in a situation, when we see them as our enemy, right? How should we actually be looking at them? And it's great stuff, really. So Shantideva, this is stanza 3. He says, those tormented by the pain of anger never know tranquility of mind. Strangers they will be to every pleasure. They will neither sleep nor feel secure. Even those dependent on their Lord for gracious gifts of honors and of wealth will rise against and slay a master who is filled with wrath and hate. So we all know, I mean, if we have, say there's somebody in our family who is, they're just, their mind is just completely uncontrolled. They have so much anger. They're always lashing out. And they're very sensitive. No matter what you say, the person is, it just completely kind of takes over the mood of the family. It's huge when you have somebody like that. If you have a parent like that, if you have a childless like that, it just colors the whole situation. We can see what a destructive force anger can be. It ruins all of the peace of mind. It ruins the composure. It's very difficult and everybody's on pins and needles all the time. So this is bad. So if we ourselves have a problem with anger, we're creating problems for everybody else. Everybody around us, we're creating problems, for. So we need to be aware of our own anger, as well as how do we deal with the other angry person, my quote enemy, Shantideva says about this angry person, his family and friends he grieves and is not served by those his gifts attract. So what he's talking about here is kind of like a lord or like a mafia boss who is sort of gives all these people these gifts and sort of draws them in. But because he's a mafia boss, a murderer, angry, the people will actually, we all seen the Godfather movies, they turn their back on him and they'll kill him. So when you're angry like that, you actually don't have real strong, close relationships. You can have sort of arrangements with people, but you can't actually get that kind of closeness, that kind of intimacy with another person when you're that angry. It's very, very difficult. He says, no one is there all in all who, being angry, lives at ease. All these ills are brought about by wrath, our sorrow-bearing enemy. The anger is our enemy. But those who seize and crush their anger down will find their joy in this and future lives. So then he gets to, what is the cause of anger? And basically, it's being discontented, being unhappy. When we don't get what we want, and we all know this, when we don't get what we want, we get frustrated. If that keeps going, we get more and more frustrated. That frustration starts to turn into anger. And then finally, and if we keep letting that go, that anger then just becomes full blown on, boom, we let it out and we cause a lot of trouble for ourselves and others. So it's basically not getting what we want and getting what we don't want. That's what causes anger. So this is what Shantideva says in stanza 7. Getting what I do not want and all that hinders my desire, in discontent my anger finds its fuel. From this it grows and beats me down. Therefore I will utterly destroy the sustenance of this my enemy, my foe who has no other purpose but to hurt and injure me. So come what may, I'll not upset my cheerful happiness of mind. Dejection never brings me what I want. My virtue will be warped and marred by it. If there's a remedy when trouble strikes, what reason is there for dejection? And if there's no help for it, what use is there in being glum? That's another one of Shantideva's famous aphorisms. It's the way we say it: if there's something we can do about a situation, then do it. If there's nothing that we can do about it, then why be upset? And that comes directly from Shantideva. So now we're getting into the cultivation of patience. And he's saying that we have to learn how to live skillfully so that we can cope with disappointments without losing kind of a basic cheerfulness, which is an essential part of the Bodhisattva path. The Bodhisattva attitude should be one of cheerfulness. It should be positive. We're on a path for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's not about being downtrodden and glum. It's a positive thing that we're doing, and we want to maintain that cheerfulness. So cultivating patience is a way to do that. So he says we cultivate patience with regard to two things. In regard to what we don't want, we cultivate patience with regard to the thing that prevents us from getting what we do want. So, for instance, if we say something we don't want somebody criticizing us. So somebody's criticizing us. Well, what we want to be doing then is cultivating patience toward that person who's criticizing us. That's where the patience is getting cultivated. So we start to think of them in a different way. Pull it out of the ego self-grasping sphere, and then think, bodhicitta, what is it that I'm now doing because I'm on this path of a bodhisattva? It's to awaken my mind. It's to see what's going on, to understand this person is hurting for some reason. They're not getting something they need. And at least I don't have to respond. Yeah.
Does he, I'm sure he does, but the kind of analytical thing you can do about karma. So if somebody is harming you,
yeah, it's your karmic appearance.
It's part of the analysis in that moment.
Absolutely, it's part of
this wouldn't be happening to do.
Yeah, but he goes into that in a big way a little later on. But I'm just giving examples. And then the other one is when you're not getting what you want and there's something blocking that. So it's like you want to make that green light, right? And then there's this person in the car in front of you. They're going so slow, and they then become the obstacle to you getting what you want. You want to go through the green light and make it, And we've all had that experience. And you're sort of almost like cursing the person in the car in front of you, like, what is wrong with you? Basically, you have to go, stop, chitta, bodhicitta, what is this about? And you go, this is the obstacle that I need to be cultivating my patience towards. So then you start thinking, well, maybe there's, something going on that I don't know about. There might be a problem with the car. I mean, you can quickly do this. The person may not be able to see well. I don't know. But don't just assume they are in my way because of what I want. They have something going on too in their own life. So we cultivate patience that way. So those are the two ways. You cultivate patience towards the thing that's directly attacking you, and then the thing that's in the way of what you want. Okay. So he says in, wait a minute. Okay, there's another kind of patience is just to knowing how to have patience towards what brings us suffering. And he splits this up. There's a patience of accepting suffering when it happens. And secondly, there's a patience of certainty regarding the ultimate reality of things. So that's to say that we can put up with suffering when we understand a little bit about the dependent arising, similar to what Kavita was saying. Everything that comes to us is like a karmic appearance. So if we begin to understand this is coming to me, I'm experiencing this suffering because it has something, it's connected to something I put out many lifetimes ago, who knows, or maybe last week, but I have a part in this. So you begin to develop an ability to accept the suffering when you realize the dependently arising nature of it. It's an interdependent kind of thing. And so you have a part in it. And you can sort of accept it, and then you figure out, how do we make this better? Yeah. And then there's a third way, he says, to approach it. And it's the patience of making light of what harms us. Don't take it so seriously. Don't make it such a big deal. Oh my goodness, you know how we can do that. Think about go back to the example of wanting to make the green light and somebody's getting in your way. Well, I have known of people, well, even Kavita, this happened to her. You were not going fast enough for some guy in a pickup truck. And he sped by her, and just all these expletives came out. I mean, wow. I mean, if we could learn to take it a little more lightly, that's not such a big deal. But look how we can get. Road rage. People actually kill one another over this stupid thing. Mm-hmm. We need to learn how to take it a little more lightly, not so seriously. But that's due to this pent up. You're just building up this frustration, building up this anger, and you don't know how to let it out.
I can't remember where it was, but anyway, I had to wait like maybe 2 minutes. And the cashier apologized for the wait, as if this was some horrible eon. It was like so pathetic that we've gotten that way.
We have. Oh God, we're so ADD. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just crazy.
But which kind of means that poor person probably has just dealt with a lot of impatient people who are not happy about having to wait 45 seconds or whatever.
So Shantideva says that the suffering is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. I mean, this is samsara. What is the first noble truth? There is suffering. It's not going to go away, anytime soon. So we have to sort of learn now, how do we deal with this? How do we live with it? And in samsara, suffering on the whole is mostly what happens. I mean, we have these happiness is kind of like sort of a respite in between, here's suffering, here's a little bit of happiness, and then there's more suffering. That's kind of what happiness is. And happiness is always temporary in samsara. That the great vacation that you went on and then it's over, or the loving relationship you have and it's gone, it's past, or somebody you loved in your family and they've died, it's over. This is the nature. So happiness in itself, in samsara, what we call happiness, is actually a form of suffering because it doesn't last. What we actually are looking for on the Bodhisattva path to become an enlightened being, to help all other sentient beings become enlightened, is lasting happiness that's without suffering. So just to understand, in samsara, in cyclic existence, suffering is the nature of things. Even if it appears to be, oh, wow, I just got married, I have a new car, I have a new house, that's all going to change. It's all going to change. And we need to recognize, we just need to know that and to accept it. And that will help us not be so frustrated and angry when things don't go our way. That's just the nature of it, the nature of cyclic existence.
Before you go on, I just want to mention, so you guys won't be surprised that some students from the university in the front where you probably saw, if you came in the front door, are coming at 1. And so after Tibetan class, some UIW students will be showing up, and just so you know.
Yeah, I think they're going to be working on, I think they'll be working mostly outside.
Yeah, they are going to be outside. I've got their coffee and tea outside.
Yeah, are they volunteering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So Shantideva says one of the advantages we have of being human is that we have enough, we've talked about this before in Lama Rim, is that we have enough positive experiences in our life, enough good things going on, and we understand what suffering is, so that we have the ability to sort of size it up, what's going on, and say, wow, I have some space in this human life where I can actually do something about this. I can practice. I can get on the Bodhisattva path. If you're in a well, say like the God realm, if you're in or even on Earth, somebody who's got so much wealth, has everything they want, nothing to worry about, they're not going to practice the Dharma. They're not going to think about it because they are getting, all the goodies of cyclic existence. And it's not until they reach their death, or like in the God realm, they say what happens when you reach your death, all of a sudden you realize what you've done. You've wasted this whole thing, and, you're going to sort of go back down into some lower state of existence. So it's very beneficial that we are humans. It's kind of like the best thing that we could have in terms of, practicing the Dharma. Yeah. He says also, suffering in human life has its value. Basically, that's what I say. If we get too comfortable, if we don't have suffering, we're not going to question, well, what's going on? How do I fix this? But with a little bit of suffering makes us start looking in another direction. So it's not that bad. It's a way of looking at suffering that is not negative. It's a way of looking at suffering that says, this is helping me change direction. He says to use little irritations, like if a mosquito bites you or something like that, rather than just go, use little irritations so that you sort of get used to, when you have little frustrations, that you deal with it in a different way. You don't deal with it in a very angry way. Like one of my pet frustrations is working out in the yard and, tree stumps. I actually get angry at these little tree stumps. It's so stupid, but I will stub my toe on it or whatever, and I'm just I can see the level of anger that is just under the surface comes out to this stump. It's like, at least it's a stump, but it's showing me, these little things, these little frustrations show us where we're at. So he says to start with those little ones. And start looking at your mind.
Really important, which is essentially, because we are samsara beings, we have a level of anger.
It's built in.
And attachment.
The attachment, yeah.
It's our default operating system.
Yeah, basically.
It doesn't take much to set it off.
What's the deal with the ego is the ego wants, needs. When the ego doesn't get what it wants, needs, that's when the ego gets angry. This happens all the time.
I want to mow the lawn, I want to get this lawn mowed. Goddamn this stuff.
Exactly. This is where I see my frustrations coming out. So but he says work with that, use it as a practice. Start changing the way you think about it. You go, oh, nice little stump, or I don't know whatever you do. I mean, you just start to use that. And he said, if you do that, then with little obstacles, little things like that, then you can build up to the bigger ones when you have your spouse yelling at you in your ear, and you're going, am I going to, do this, or how can I diffuse it? Or you're yelling at your spouse.
You know what's worse? I do this all the time, and Pittsburgh can attest to it. There's like, again, this underlying, like, I want what I want, I don't want what I don't want. And so there's like this underlying, like, just ready to be annoyed.
It's waiting to be annoying.
Yeah.
Just come on, try me.
Anything, honestly. I hear
Oh, no.
myself sometimes respond with these snarky responses because for really no.
Well, you know how it is if you're living with somebody, right? And they have particular habits. And you maybe don't like a particular habit, right? And it builds up, it builds up, it builds up over the years. And then all of a sudden, one year, it's like, you know? Well, that's what Shantideva is saying. Don't let it build up. Take these little things.
I think the
And work with
little things might even get you into like habitual awareness.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what it might get you into this habitual pattern of being aware.
Yeah.
And then maybe a small thing, then maybe you naturally become that. You know? So maybe the habitual awareness is what we need to practice on small things.
We are nothing but a series of habits.
Right.
And so we want to make our habits
Right.
positive ones.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
And that's the point.
Awareness.
And you're absolutely right. It's changing our frustration with these little things, turning it around so that we have the habit of not being frustrated by them.
Yeah.
And then that habit develops.
Yeah.
And so because we have that habit, when something bigger happens, like maybe the person in front of us in the green light, you know, we don't get so angry. And then we can take it to bigger things, bigger, you know, big life altering situations.
If you think about just everybody in your city or your family or the world if you want to, and just this like moment of reflection, it's like, God, every single human being who's not enlightened that's on this planet right now is burdened by this kind of spontaneous irritation driven by their, you know, craving and grasping and aversion. And what a sad state of affairs that everywhere you go, everyone you encounter is just burdened by this.
Right. And so there's
It's very
something that
sad.
actually we can do to help.
There's a lot of bodhicitta to it.
There's a lot of bodhicitta
Mind
to,
and
you know,
that.
to develop. And
But,
this
you
is
know,
why.
to generalize it.
Yeah.
No wonder this class.
Right. And this is this is another thing he talks about. Oh, well, we'll not go to that yet. The way Shantideva talks about being a bodhisattva is very much like a hero warrior. And it could be that Shantideva came from a royal family, and then the caste system in India at that time, that include the rulers and the military. So he was very familiar. He would have been familiar with this whole military point of view. So he approaches everything as if it's like this, you're a warrior. He has a very aggressive stance against his own anger. Like he's going to fight this enemy. So so when it seems a little harsh the way he talks about things, if you bear in mind that he's sort of coming from that caste, and he's using that, his own experience, when he talks about this, he says, there are some, this is stanza 17, there are some whose bravery increases at the sight of their own blood. And so what he's like talking about, like, say you've seen some of these movies, like say Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And he's fighting, and it's like, he gets something, you know, he gets sliced on his arm and he goes, you know, his bravery increases, right? You know, or Indiana Jones, he gets sliced, he's, but there are also some people at the sight of blood, they just go, you know, they faint. They can't, I mean, and somebody else, they can't, you know. So he's talking about this. So he says, there are some whose bravery increases at the sight of their own blood, while some, he says, lose all their strength and faint when it's another's blood they see. Then he goes on in stanza 18, and he says, this results from how the mind is set in steadfastness or cowardice. And so I'll scorn all injury, and hardships I will disregard. So, you know, think like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Indiana Jones next time somebody yells at you. But you're not getting mad at them. This is what he
It's
said.
just a flesh wound.
Huh?
Just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh.
Just a flesh wound.
What you're getting mad
Monty
at
Python.
is your anger. It's your own anger that you're getting mad at. You know?
Right.
That's the Arnold Schwarzenegger's thinking, getting mad at his own anger. So it's
I want to give a very ordinary type of example that I read, I think in Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, that we all have experienced that's a lot more ordinary. And it's the story of this monk who's in line for, like at a cafeteria, in line to get breakfast, right? And he's worried that the yogurt is going to run out before he gets to help himself to yogurt, which he loves very much. And he's really mad at the people in front of him who are taking yogurt. And suddenly he, recognizes what he's doing, and he starts hitting himself, saying, "Thief, thief! You're stealing all the yogurt." And he's like realizing.
yeah.
I mean, have you ever done that?
Not hit myself. But, yeah. Oh no. Oh, there are times at the dinner table that it happens. I mean, I remember growing up.
Getting in line at Disneyland.
Oh,
trying to get-
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You don't want those mean people to get by in front of you. That lady. Spits her out for the top.
Who are the Karna folk?
Don't know.
Okay.
Is there a footnote on that?
No, they're, yeah, 75.
Yeah.
So I'll look at
Yeah.
it.
So he says, the Bodhisattva is a hero who conquers the extraordinary enemy of afflictive emotions.
Got it.
That's what the Bodhisattva is conquering. It's not the other person. So it's if we can if we can do that, if we can overcome our afflictive emotions, that's quite an accomplishment, and that's what we're aiming towards. And we should feel really good about that and motivated about that. He says, succumbing to our anger and killing an ordinary enemy is no more brave than stabbing a dead body.
Right.
It's nothing compared to overcoming our own afflictive emotions. When we can do that, that's a huge accomplishment in terms of being a warrior, against your own negativities. And then there's this other thing, and this goes back to what I think you were talking about before. He's saying that suffering itself can have its own worth. For instance, if you think about, people in the healthcare industry will sometimes talk about this. Say a person has been they're very, very ill. Maybe they're ravaged with cancer or something. Well, that very often that person can become quite humble, and they begin to be very grateful for everything everybody is doing for them. And they also begin to think, there's this thing where I've seen people do this, where they go, they understand now what other people's suffering is, because they're now experiencing that suffering. Mm-hmm. And they'll even think things like, may this suffering I'm going through, somehow be a benefit to all those others who are suffering in that way. That suffering itself can soften us up. It can make us more compassionate. It can make us connect with others in a way that we never did before. It can make us recognize the frailty of our own body, which we sometimes think is so invincible and it's never going to be sick. We become a little more realistic and humbled sometimes, not all the time, when we experience suffering. And so suffering has a good quality in that way, if we can use it that way. So for instance, if we have some ongoing kind of problem, something, I don't know, unique to physical or psychological or something like that. If we have something like that, and we know that's a kind of problem that other people have, it can actually connect us to those other people. It can make us feel compassion and empathy with them. And that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. So in that way, suffering can actually be, we can use it to be a beneficial thing. It can grow our compassion, it can grow the citta, the bodhicitta. Then he goes into this really interesting thing. This is saying that our enemies are themselves the victims of their own afflictive emotions. So when somebody say they're yelling at us or criticizing us, if we can actually realize it's their afflictive emotions that they're the victim of here, that's why they're doing it, and not get angry at the person, at the heart of that person, at the who that person is, not get angry at them, but realize it's their afflictive emotions like we all have them, to understand that that's what's going on, and to be a little more, it gives you a little more space to not just engage, so he's encouraging us to look at our enemies as not really an enemy. That it's the emotion, their afflictive emotions are what the defilements are, not the person. Yeah. He says, this is stanza 23. Although they are unlooked for, undesired, these ills afflict us all the same. And likewise, though unwanted and unsought, defilements nonetheless insistently arise. Never thinking, now I will be angry, people are impulsively caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. All defilements of whatever kind, the whole variety of evil and extremely negative deeds, are brought about by circumstances. None are independent, none are autonomous. Thus, when enemies or friends are seen to act improperly, remain serene and call to mind that everything arises from conditions. If things could be according to their wish, no suffering would ever come to anyone of all embodied beings, for none of them wants pain of any kind. So nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants. If we all had our choice, everybody would want to be happy and they wouldn't want to suffer. So we need to bear that in mind. When somebody is, when we see somebody as an enemy, whoever it may be, it doesn't have to be even personal, it could be a public figure. We see if those afflictive emotions are causing them suffering, and to see them in a completely different light. And even though they may be, they could be powerful people, but still we need to think of them not as these evil people who are not connected to us. We need to connect with the heart. I always use, take your favorite politician that you love to hate, right? Take that one and realize that they're being afflicted by their own negative emotions. They don't want to be unhappy.
Can I add also with regard to politicians, and this is a pervasive thing about, if you only know about them and see about them and hear about them through media.
Oh yeah.
You don't know 1/100th of what that person.
That's absolutely true.
So in a sense, you're also reacting to a big mirage.
We're getting a view like this
Right.
of public
You don't know
figures.
it yet.
We're getting a very small view, and that view is being controlled. So we need to bear that in mind too. And that's where wisdom comes in. We need to be very discerning about what's going on, and not just accept everything as the way it appears. So there's a lot here to think about. So he talks about this thing about a stick, and he says, when somebody say they have a stick and they're hitting us with a stick, well, we're not angry at the stick that the person is gripping. We're angry at the person, right? But if we realize that the person themselves is being gripped by afflictive emotions, it's just like the way they're gripping the stick, then we can sort of not get angry at the person. In the same way that we don't get angry at the stick. He says, although it is their sticks that hurt me, I'm angry at the ones who wield them, striking me, but they in turn are driven by their hatred. Therefore, with their hatred, I should take offense. We're taking offense with the afflictive emotions, not the person. With their hatred, I take offense. In just the same way in the past, I it was who injured living beings. Therefore, it is right that injury should come to me, their torturer, and who indeed should I be angry with? This pain is all my own contriving. So what now he's getting into, he's talking about karma. He's talking about when something occurs to that like us, this is a karmic appearance happening to us. Good or bad, it's a karmic appearance. So, but when somebody's attacking us, it's due to karma. And there are these, they call them in Tibetan lojong, Lojong sayings, and these sayings are like aphorisms or little slogans, short things that help you sort of you meditate on them. And so one of them is, how's it go? When somebody attacks you, it's like an echo coming back from a cliff. It's like when somebody attacks you, it's like an echo coming back from a cliff. In other words, at some point, you shouted at the cliff, and now you're experiencing the echo of that. That's how he's saying to look at this karmic situation. Karmic appearances, they're like echoes coming back from a cliff. It could be eons ago that we shouted, or it could be last week that we shouted, but it's coming back to us, and to recognize that is what's happening. And when we see our role in a situation like that, then he's saying, this sounds convoluted, but with the way he explains it, it makes sense. That person is attacking you because of something that you did that was similar in some other time. So in a way, you're the one that's causing that person to be attacking. So he's saying, in a way, you're the one who's the problem. And it's like, wow, that's really going around in circles there, isn't it? But it's in very subtle way that he's looking at situations like that. And he continues with it. Why is this person harming me? It's because of karma that I myself have accumulated. So here's then this really interesting thing that he gets into. He says, when we become a bodhisattva, so we're on this bodhisattva path, right? We're bodhisattvas, we're beginning to engage. We're in training now. We think it's a good idea, we like the idea, and so we're training. So we're on the bodhisattva path. So he says, when somebody, if anyone attacks a bodhisattva, who injures a bodhisattva, because of the sonam, the merit, the positive potential that exists in that bodhisattva person, they become a very sort of a powerful object to be attacking, and there are consequences to attacking such a powerful object. He says it's not like attacking an ordinary person, it's much worse. So there's some power and seriousness of being a bodhisattva. And he says what we become are perilous objects. And the word in Tibetan is nyenpo, which is sort of like strong or what I have, powerful, serious, weighty. So a bodhisattva then becomes this powerful, serious, weighty being that if you attack that being, there are going to be larger consequences. It would be like if we attacked, if somebody attacked the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's this huge force for basically peace in the world. When you attack somebody like that, you are attacking the hope of so many other beings. It becomes a huge, big karmic thing for somebody. If somebody were to kill His Holiness, that's huge karma, much more so, because than just an ordinary person who has maybe a small sphere of people that they are directly affecting. When you have somebody that's like working like His Holiness and you attack them, it's a big, big karmic deal. So what Shantideva is saying is we need to bear that in mind ourselves. If we're on this path and we're serious about this path, we want to diffuse any kind of conflict that's happening with us and somebody else, because the harm to them could be greater than we know. So it becomes sort of our responsibility to just not let that kind of thing happen, to do whatever it takes to keep that person, calm them down, don't have them attack you. Because a bodhisattva becomes this very powerful object. At this point, it feels like, I don't feel that way. But if you actually think about what we're intending to do, it's huge. And if we keep on this path for lifetime after lifetime, it's only going to get stronger. So it's good to know about that now when we're starting out. So he says, stanza 47, those who harm me rise against me. It's my karma that has summoned them. And if through this, these beings go to hell, is it not I who bring their ruin? Because of them and through my patience, all my many negative actions are cleansed and purified. But they will be the ones who, thanks to me, will have the long-drawn agonies of suffering in lower states of existence. Therefore, I am their tormentor. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. Thus, with what perversity, pernicious mind, will you be angry with your enemies? If a patient quality of mind is mine, I shall avoid the pains of hell. But though indeed I save myself, what of my foes? What fate's in store for them? If I repay them harm for harm, indeed they'll not be saved thereby. My conduct will in turn be marred, and my austerity of patience brought to nothing. So he's warning us that there are consequences as a bodhisattva in, engaging in anger with others. Then he talks about how enemies are actually valuable to us. He says we all know that, friends, we like our friends. Friends can be kind to us, but even the enemy is always kind because they give us the opportunity to practice patience. Who else is going to? How do we ever practice patience if we don't have something to trigger our anger? We have to. That we can't. Otherwise, we'll be in la la land going, "Oh, I'm patient, I'm patient, I'm patient," and then somebody will come along and will blow up. We have to have those little things. Start out with the stump. Start out with little bad habits, but we've got to have those in order to practice patience. So, in a way, our enemies are our friends on the Bodhisattva path. They're helping us. So that's, as a trainer, as we're, or a trainee, we should think that way. We should think, they're being set up. Oh, it's like in the Matrix, when they take what's his name, Keanu Reeves' character, and they take him into this thing where he's doing all this jujitsu stuff, and he's training. Well, he's fighting this guy, and he's learning, but he's welcoming. It's like, okay, come on, let me try again. So we look at our enemies that way. We look at it as part of our training. We see that they're helping us. It's a completely different view. This is why I'm saying, zöpa, you're carrying the anger out of the sphere of self-grasping ego, and you're putting it into the sphere of bodhicitta and this training. So this is what patience is now for us. It's a training. It's a way of training, and to think of it like that. So he says, in general, bodhisattvas spend their whole time being a benefit to others. So it's a really rare opportunity when an enemy shows up, because mostly people like bodhisattvas. So you use that opportunity when you've got somebody, who's going to be your enemy. There's a really there's a funny story about Atisha, who brought the Dharma to Tibet in the second diffusion there. He was invited by the king of Tibet, a small king, to come up and spread the Dharma. So Atisha had heard, before he embarked for his journey onto Tibet, he had heard that the Tibetans were very nice people. So he thought, oh, this is not good for my practice. This is not good. I need some, enemy to bring me. So he had this little Bengali servant boy, which was just a real pain in the ass. I mean, the Bengali servant boy was just always criticizing Atisha, and was just a horror to live with. So he brought this servant boy with him to Tibet. And then the joke of the story is the one that teachers tell us, that, well, when he got to Tibet, he found out that he didn't really have to bring the servant boy after all. There are plenty of sentient beings everywhere that, but that's just, it shows you the way somebody like that thinks, Boy, I need somebody to aggravate me because I need to develop my patience. So, all of you married folks, bring it on. It's a way to develop our patience, right? It's great. And don't feel bad if you fall off the wagon and get angry. We're in training, right? We're in training. Just pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and start over again. And remember, we're in training. We're going to fail. How many times did... Remember the time, and again, in the Matrix, remember the time when he jumps off the skyscraper and thinks, I'm going to fly. And it's like, no, all right. He failed, but he picked himself back up, splat, and started over again. You know, that's how we should think of it. So now he gets into what are called the 8 worldly concerns. And these are in samsara, these are things that all sentient beings are driven by. This is what runs the ego, these 8 worldly concerns. There are these series of attachments and aversions, these sets of attachments and aversions that, I mean, you'll recognize them. Tenzin Palmo, she's this very well-known Tibetan nun. She calls them the 8 hang-ups, the 8 worldly hang-ups. And they are, and there are these pairings. There's having things and not having things. So you want stuff and you don't want to not have stuff. Having things and not having things. Comfort and discomfort. Praise and blame. And good reputation and bad reputation. And Shantideva says this one, the good reputation and the bad reputation, is the most difficult for the Bodhisattva. And so he as he goes through and talks about these worldly concerns, 8 worldly concerns, he puts a sharp focus on reputation and bad loss of reputation, because it's so important. It can really, our teachers have told stories about, you know, monks who've gone through all kinds of meditation up in their cave on the top of the mountain, and they've reached all of these kinds of levels of understanding and realizations, but they're still worried about what the villagers and the people in the village think about them. They're still concerned about their reputation. That's how strong that is. So he talks a lot about this in the next stanzas. He says, this is stanza 62. And if when people slander us, we claim our anger is because they injure others with their words, how is it we do not resent their slander when it's aimed at someone else? When people say unpleasant things to us, and if it's just the nasty words that are bothering us, well, then why doesn't it bother us when they say nasty words to somebody else? Not somebody who we like or care about, but somebody, you know, we don't know, or, you know, and it doesn't matter to us. It's still slander. But the reason we get upset is because our attachment to our own reputation. And this is a big, he goes into a lot of detail on this. And, you know, I mean, we can even, you know, we don't like slander ourselves, and we don't want slander for our friends and family. But we don't care too much because it doesn't have anything to do with us, with somebody we don't know. But if they slander that politician we love to hate, yay, you know, and whoa, that is not good for Bodhisattva. We do not want to go there. We cannot be doing that, you know, we just can't. That isn't, whoever it is, however evil you may think they are, they still have a heart, they still have a mind, and they still have the potential to become enlightened. And we don't want to be rejoicing. I mean, the whole point of this path is that we can become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So if we're rejoicing over the sorrow or the pain of somebody else, what is that saying? You know, we have to be really, really clear about this. Because it's such a strong habit that we all have, you know. And the media doesn't help. And, you know, the whole system where samsara doesn't help, you know, it doesn't help.
The media is divisive speech on steroids.
Oh, I've never seen anything like it.
Literally pitting one group of person against another group of person for no other reason other than to create divisiveness.
So they'll be rating.
So that,
we just need to not even, or if we do look at it very clearly for what it is.
right,
It's divisive speech.
right, everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, we have to start getting pretty sharp about our lives and everything that we're doing and what we're watching, what we're paying attention to, what we're getting drawn into. We have to be really sharp and clear as we continue on this path. He says, you know, so far we've all been going through samsara. We've all been suffering continually over and over again with no benefit from that suffering. Now we actually have an opportunity to derive benefit from it. We're now going to be battling our own afflictive emotions. And remember, it's always we're battling our own emotions, no matter who's attacking us, no matter who, whatever it is, it's us. It's our own negative emotions that we're doing battle against. This is the Jedi Knight, you know. Search your feelings, Luke. So then in that sense, then this suffering actually, we can actually now finally derive some benefit from this, because we're learning how to shift it and change it, change our view, change the way we behave, change the path that we're on. So we're using, basically, like I was saying, we're using our enemies. Come on, I need some more training. Think of it that way, not like, you know, you're battling the person, you're battling your responses. You know, you're battling your own negativities. Then he starts talking about jealousy. How are we doing? Good. This is stanza 79. He says, when praise is heaped upon your qualities, you're keen that others should be pleased thereby. But when the compliment is paid to others, you feel no inclination to rejoice as well. How many of us have done that? And this is coming out of the mouth of a yogi, you know, that it's difficult for us. You know, we love it when people praise what something we've done. But then that sort of a little jealousy arises when somebody else is getting praise, right? And he's saying we need to now be looking at this. He says this is a mistake. The Dalai Lama says, when good things are said of others, we should try and join in. Mm-hmm. Then maybe we'll get a little happiness ourselves. You know, what is it hurting? You know, join in with this. You know, don't back off and be, because he says if we can't do that, if we can't even rejoice over somebody else's good qualities like that, we're going to become very stingy. We'll become separated off from others. We'll go into depression. We need to learn how to rejoice over others' good qualities and not be jealous. Jealous is coming from the ego. And the whole ego is the thing that we're battling. You know, the ego actually needs to be, the ego is simply an idea, and that idea needs to be wiped out. Yeah. He says in stanza 80, you who want the happiness of beings have wished to be enlightened for their sake. So why should others irk you when they find some pleasure for themselves? You know, I mean, think about it. But what he's saying is that this particular thing, this jealousy thing, is a very strong thing that runs in sentient beings. So we have to sort of weed this out, pull this out, see what it is, and get uprooted. And the only way we're going to do that is by actually starting to rejoice in other beings' qualities. The more we can do that, the more we can honestly and sincerely do that and feel a happiness about that, the more we are going to get rid of this jealousy problem that comes from the ego. In stanza 83, he says, if even this you do not want for beings, how could you want Buddhahood for them? If you don't even want them, you know, to get some praise from other people for their good qualities, how could you even want Buddhahood for them, you know? And how can anyone have bodhicitta who is angry when another prospers? It's just, you know, always keep thinking, no matter what negative emotion comes up, just go back to my heart. Bodhicitta, bodhicitta, bodhicitta. Let that be the thing. Any negative emotion that comes up, make the trigger for that. Go back to your heart. Bodhicitta, bodhicitta. What am I about? What am I trying to do here? You know, and that will help us with our practice. You know, at least we'll keep our mouth shut. You know, which is a place to start. You know. Yeah. So, jeez. So, you know, His Holiness says, he says, if we can't bear others being happy, how can we pretend to be seeking Buddhahood? And when things are not going well for someone we dislike, what is the point in rejoicing about that? It doesn't, he says, it doesn't make that being's present suffering any better or worse. And even if it did, how sad is it that we would wish such a thing on any sentient being, no matter who, no matter how evil we think they are? Like I said, they still have a heart and a mind. So how sad is that? We need to think about that carefully. Then he goes into this thing about the distractions of praise and status. And stanza 90, he says, veneration, praise, and fame serve not to increase merit. They don't increase sonam, or my span of life, bestowing neither health nor strength, and nothing for the body's ease. If I am wise in what is good for me, I'll ask what benefit these bring, veneration, praise, and fame. What benefit do they have? For if it's entertainment I'm desiring, I might as well resort to alcohol and cards. This is Shantideva. Apparently they drank and played cards in the 8th century. You know, I mean, it's basically, if that's all you want, well, then just, you know, have fun with your distractions, you know, play games, drink, do drugs, go on trips, whatever it is, just get yourself distracted. If that's all you want, that's not the Bodhisattva path. That's not the long, long, long view. That's samsara, you know. So he's, you know, if we are rejoicing over some enemy's downfall, we need to, you know, go, that's samsara. That's not what I'm trying to do here. As a bodhisattva. Then His Holiness goes on, he says, many of us will spend huge amounts of money and even deceive our friends about ourselves in order to gain some kind of temporary status. Like, you know, I don't know what, you know, oh, I went, you know, here and here, you know, all these postings on Facebook, you know, all these wonderful places people have gone and all the, you know, they'll look at their house, look at their car, look at, and it's just all about, you know, Facebook. Yes, it's a means of communicating, but boy, wow, it's, you could almost call it ego book, you know, because it can be like that. And I just don't even go there. I don't even look at it anymore. I never really did. I saw it when it first came out. I said, this is kind of dangerous. This is something, the fact that you could get into somebody's life you didn't even know and get into their personal details seemed really wrong in some way to me. And then what it's become, it's sort of like this look at me thing, you know, and it's kind of like what His Holiness is saying. Now, there are benefits to it. I'm not saying there aren't benefits to it. There sure are. You know, we can stay in touch with one another. Then he goes to stanza 99. Shantideva says, those who stay close by me then to damage my good name and cut me down to size are surely there protecting me from falling into realms of grief. So he's saying those people who, you know, cut you down and criticize you, and usually they're the ones we live with, because it's on a regular basis, day to day, they are actually helping. When we look at it the correct way, when we look at it as a part of the Bodhisattva training, part of the path, then that person is actually, you know, you want to thank them because they're pointing out things. There's so much about ourselves we don't even see, we don't recognize. We don't recognize what we're doing, how we're behaving until somebody points it out to us. You know, have you ever had the, you know, opportunity to, you know, you don't actually see how, we know when I've been looking at these videos to see how they're going, and I'm sort of seeing myself, oh wow, that's how I look, that's what I say. I mean, I don't even think about that, but other people can see us in a different way, and they can, if we take their criticism as help, you know, maybe they are mistaken, but even if we think they're trying to be helpful through their criticism, that will be much better for us, you know. Usually what we do is we just go back, how dare you, and then start criticizing them. I know. We all know this. We all know the routine. We know how it goes. What we want to do is go, all right, we've done that. It didn't work. Let's do something else. Let's change how we view this. So as bodhisattvas.
Okay, so I was being criticized. Trap, it's a trap.
I know it's a trap. I'm not falling for that. Come on, criticize me some. No. I've always thought you were wonderful from the time I met you. No, it's true. I always thought she was just the sweetest thing.
You guys were 13?
13, yeah.
something like
Yeah. Too dumb to know, huh? Well, look, here we still are. I guess we're still pretty dumb, huh? His Holiness says, it's no use excusing ourselves, saying that our enemies are preventing us from practicing. And that's why we get angry. If I could just get away from everything, get off and go into retreat, blah, 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 then I could practice. That's not what a Bodhisattva practice is about. That may work if you're trying to do single pointed concentration for a temporary period of time. But if you're walking the path of a Bodhisattva, you want to be out there. You want to be where all the action is happening, because that's the only way we're going to be able to train. It's not running off into the forest. Not at this point. If we truly wish to progress, His Holiness says, there is no practice more important than patience. We cannot pretend to be practitioners if we have no patience. And how can we practice patience if there are no people to test it by triggering our anger? We actually need the enemies. We need people to trigger our anger so we can actually practice. How can we call such people obstacles to our practice of patience, which is fundamental to the Mahayana path? He says you might as well call a beggar, you might as well, call a beggar an obstacle to your generosity. An enemy is not an obstacle to our practicing our patience. An enemy is how we practice our patience. So that's really, these are kind of new thoughts. It's sort of like what it's saying, a zöpa. You're taking it and you're bringing it into a thing that's useful. What normally our ego would do with it, you're carrying it to another place. You're carrying it, you're bearing it. It's not you're putting up with it until it goes away. You are actually transforming it and using it. You're using it for your practice to help all other sentient beings, to understand how the mind works. His Holiness then says, there are many reasons for generosity. The world is full of beings in need. On the other hand, those who make us angry and test our patience are relatively few, especially if we're trying to avoid harming others. If we're trying to, walk the path of a bodhisattva and not harm others, well, people are going to kind of think we're nice. So it's going to be more and more difficult to run into people who are really going to test, our patience. Which is probably why a teacher brought his little Bengali servant boy with him, And like I say, husbands and wives are really good, they're good practice partners. If you're both on the same, path, then you can actually seriously can practice with one another. It's beneficial. So Shantideva says in stanza 107, we're doing good. So like a treasure found at home, that I have gained without fatigue, my enemies are helpers in my bodhisattva work, and therefore they should be a joy to me. And then His Holiness says, when we actually have been successful in being patient toward our enemies, we should dedicate the fruit of our practice to that person, who helped us, that enemy. When we actually have learned to be patient because somebody is attacking us, and it's worked, we've been successful. We recognize what they did for us, and we dedicate our merit to them for that. We dedicate, how does he put it? We dedicate the fruit of the practice to them. It shows you that what they're talking about is a totally different way of looking at things than the ego is used to. His Holiness says, they've actually been very kind to us. We might ask, why should they deserve this dedication when they had no intention of making us practice patience? He said, but do objects need to have an intention before they are worthy of our respect? The printed words of the Dharma itself, the printed words themselves, they have no intention to be a benefit to us. And yet look at all of the benefit we derive from practicing what those written words say. So this is why, Dharma books are venerated. It's not that it's in the book. It's not that the book has the intention. It's what this book has done to be a benefit, how we've used it, how it's been a benefit to us. So you don't have, so he's saying, even if your enemies weren't intending to help you, they still did. They don't have the intention to be of help. You still can dedicate, the fruits of your practice to them. All you want to do is help them.
Right. And that kind of helps them burn some.
Exactly.
And it helps them along their
Right.
path.
Right. Yeah.
Just in case, we are going to be having Tibetan class if you just joined for that and you're here wondering why this is going on. This is the tail end of the previous class.
Yeah. We'll be in 10 minutes for sure. We'll be there. So this is really important now. This particular topic it's called the two fields for accumulating sonam, for accumulating this positive energy and this positive potential. And the two fields are Buddhas and sentient beings. Buddhas and sentient beings. These are both are equally important for our sonam, for developing our positive potential.
Did you say two what?
Fields.
Fields.
Yeah, like how they call it the merit field. Shantideva, stanza 111, he says, "Thanks to those whose minds are full of malice, I engender patience in myself. They therefore are the causes of my patience, fit for veneration like the Dharma." And so the mighty sage, the Buddha, has spoken of the field of beings as well as the field of conquerors. Many who brought happiness to beings have passed beyond attaining to perfection. Thus, the state of Buddhahood depends on beings and on Buddhas equally. What kind of practice is it then that honors only Buddhas, but not beings, not sentient beings?
Mhm.
So it is with the aid of sentient beings, wretched as they may be, that we can accumulate positive actions, develop bodhicitta, practice the 6 perfections, and attain the qualities of a Buddha. Without suffering beings, we will never grow our compassion. It's the only way we can grow our compassion. The compassion is the wish to not see someone suffer. So actually it is through sentient beings that we learn how to be compassionate. It's so important. It's these two wings of the whole practice, compassion and wisdom, is what you need in order to become a Buddha. If you just have wisdom, well, the furthest you can get is some kind of solitary nirvana where you're just sort of off by yourself, which makes absolutely no sense. Okay. Yeah. So both the beings and the Buddhas are equally important. His Holiness says, of course, they're not equal in their qualities. They're not equal in their qualities, but in the sense that beings have the potential, sentient beings have the potential to assist in our accumulating sonam and gaining enlightenment, we can say that they are equal to the Buddhas. In that sense, they are equal. We cannot do it without either. We need both, and that's important to remember. Shantideva says, stanza 119, "The Buddhas are my true unfailing friends, boundless the benefits they bring to me. How else may I repay their goodness but by making living sentient beings happy? Buddhas are made happy by the joy of beings. They sorrow, they lament when beings suffer. By bringing joy to beings, then, I please the Buddhas also. By wounding them, I wound the Buddhas too."
It's time.
Yeah, it's time. So
It is time.
yeah. So let's say our closing prayers. We've basically covered everything.
Mhm.
Dedicate the merit.
Very nice.
And let's just do them in English so we understand exactly what we're saying here. Start with the one that says Jangchuk Semchok, and we'll do these in English. It's the bottom of page 2. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then on the next page, under the Guru dedication, where it says, may anyone, we'll read that one. May anyone who merely sees or hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me, be instantly freed from all sufferings and abide in happiness forever. And then the final dedication. In all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. And so we dedicate this merit.
If you're not staying with the button, you can scoot out.
And then Dickie can, is this a good place for her to set up? Yeah, can you get your
Yes.
everything you need? Yeah.
You want art stand and a writing surface.
We have those white folders in the slide. Should I start a new recording?
Yeah.
All right. I'll start a new recording.